Let me ask you a question. What separates the people who dream about success from the people who live it? It's not luck. It's not talent. It's not who their parents were or where they were born. It comes down to one thing, their work ethic. You see, most people want the reward, but very few are willing to pay the price. Everyone loves the idea of success, but when it comes time to sweat, to sacrifice, to grind when nobody's watching, that's where the separation happens. That's where champions are made. Work ethic is not glamorous. It's not exciting. It's those long nights when you could have gone to bed, but instead you stayed up perfecting your craft. It's those early mornings when the alarm goes off and everything in you says, stay in bed. But you rise anyway. It's choosing discipline over comfort, consistency over excuses, and standards over mediocrity. And I'll tell you this, your life will never rise higher than the standard you demand from yourself. If you accept laziness, if you tolerate mediocrity, if you make excuses, you're designing a future of regret. But if you demand more, if you're willing to put in the work when others quit, if you treat every moment like it matters, you can bend reality to your will. That's why this message is for you. Because deep down, you're capable of more. There's a version of you that is stronger, more disciplined, more relentless. And tonight, we're going to unlock it. Tonight, we're going to talk about the truth behind work ethic, the force that will determine whether your dreams stay in your head or become the life you actually live. So lean in. Just listen. Decide right now that you will take what you hear and put it into action. Because if you do, your entire life can change. When people talk about success, they often think it's about opportunity, luck, or timing. I want you to understand something at the deepest level. Your life is not shaped by the chances you get. It's shaped by the standards you set. Every outcome in your life, every relationship, every dollar in your bank account, every ounce of energy in your body, it's all a reflection of what you've decided to tolerate and what you've decided you're worthy of. Your standards are like an invisible thermostat. No matter how high your ambition rises in the moment, if your standard is set low, you will find a way to pull yourself back down. And the opposite is true. If your standard is set high, if you demand more from yourself than anyone else could ever demand of you, then even in moments of weakness, you will find a way to rise. Think about it for a moment. How many times in your life have you wanted something badly? You said you wanted to lose weight, make more money, build a business, create a relationship that's extraordinary, and yet you didn't follow through. Was it because you didn't know what to do? No. You knew, deep down, you knew the actions. The problem wasn't knowledge. The problem was your standard. You only did the work when it was convenient. You only gave effort when it was comfortable. And what you were really saying is, I want the outcome, but I'm not raising my standard to deserve it. That's why so many people feel stuck. They dream big but life small because their standard never matches their vision. The truth is, we don't get in life what we want. We get in life what we must have. There's a massive difference between I'd like to and I must. When something is a like to, you'll do it if it's easy, if it fits in, if it doesn't disrupt your comfort zone. But when something becomes a must, you'll crawl through fire to make it real. You'll do it no matter what. And the only difference between those two levels is the standard you hold yourself to. Look around you. Every person you admire, every person who inspires you, special because they were born lucky. They live at a higher standard. They demand more from themselves than anyone else ever could. They don't accept excuses. They don't settle for good enough. And they don't negotiate with their goals. They live by a code that says, this is who I am, this is what I do, and I will not accept less. That's the essence of work ethic. It's not just about doing the work. It's about raising the bar so high that anything below it feels unacceptable to you. And here's what's fascinating when you raise your standard. You don't even need to push yourself as much. You just live differently. Think about breathing. You don't wake up in the morning and say, I hope I get enough air today. Breathing is a must. It's wired into you. You don't struggle with it. You don't debate it. That's what happens when you change your standard. If your standard is to exercise every day, you don't argue with yourself in the morning. You don't negotiate. You just do it. If your standard is to give 110% in your business, that's just who you are. It's automatic. You don't need a pep talk to follow through. You follow through because anything less feels out of alignment with your identity. But here's the challenge. Most people never consciously raise their standards. They inherit them. They take the standards of their parents, their friends, their environment, and they live by those without ever questioning them. Everyone around you settles for just getting by, then chances are that became your normal. If everyone around you quits when it gets tough, that probably became your threshold. And then you wonder why your life looks like theirs. You wonder why you're not fulfilled. The answer is simple. You've been living by borrowed standards instead of creating your own. So how do you change it? You decide. You draw a line in the sand and you say, we'll no longer accept this level for myself. Not, I hope it changes. Not, I'd like it to change. But I am done living this way. And from this moment forward, I hold myself to something greater. That's the power of a standard shift. In an instant, your entire identity can change. Think about people who have transformed their health overnight, not because a diet magically worked, but because one day they said, I will not live this way anymore. Think about someone who's been struggling financially for years, and then suddenly they break through. What changed? They raised the standard. They stopped tolerating excuses. They stopped living paycheck to paycheck, and they decided that their family deserved better. That's when everything turned around. The beauty is raising your standard doesn't cost money. It doesn't require a degree. It doesn't depend on your background. It's a decision. Right now, you can decide that what you used to tolerate, you'll never tolerate again. You can decide that from this moment forward, you'll live at a higher level. And here's the truth. When you raise your standard, your brain finds a way to meet it. If you've ever been broke but somehow found a way to pay your rent, you know what I mean? You didn't suddenly get smarter. You just made it non-negotiable. You raised the standard in that moment and life responded. And let me tell you something. Once you taste the power of living at a higher standard, you'll never want to go back, because mediocrity feels suffocating when you've experienced what it's like to demand excellence from yourself. The energy is different. The confidence is different. People feel it in you. They respect it. And most importantly, you respect yourself. You walk differently when you know you're not cutting corners. You talk differently when you know you're living up to your word. That confidence bleeds into every area of your life, your relationships, your career, your health, your finances. It becomes who you are. So ask yourself right now, what have I been tolerating? Where have I been lowering my standards? Excuses have I been buying into that keep me small? Because the second you answer that question honestly, you'll see exactly what's been holding you back. And the moment you decide you're done accepting less, your life will shift. Not next week, not next year. The moment you decide you change, your standards define your results. They always have and they always will. Most people wait for motivation to strike before they take action. They wait for that spark, that burst of energy, that feeling of excitement that says, now I'm ready. But let me tell you the truth, you can't build a life on motivation because motivation is unreliable. It's like the wind. It comes, it goes, it shifts direction, and you can't control it. Your results depend on whether you feel motivated. Your life will always be inconsistent. The people who achieve at the highest level, the ones who actually follow through and create extraordinary lives, don't rely on motivation. They rely on discipline. Discipline is the muscle that keeps you moving forward when motivation disappears. Think about it. How many times have you said you were going to start a new routine? Maybe it was hitting the gym. Maybe it was waking up earlier. Maybe it was putting in the extra work on your business. At first, you felt fired up. You were inspired. You had that rush of energy and it was easy to follow through. But then a few days went by or a few weeks. Suddenly the feeling wasn't there anymore. And when the feeling was gone, so was the action. That's why most people start strong, but finish weak. They're slaves to their moods instead of being driven by their commitments. Discipline is what bridges the gap between wanting something and actually achieving it. It's doing what needs to be done even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. That's the difference maker. Discipline doesn't ask you if you're in the mood. Discipline doesn't care if you're tired. Discipline doesn't wait for the perfect conditions. It just demands that you show up and do the work. And when you live that way, something powerful happens. Your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who only acts when it's easy, and you start seeing yourself as someone who follows through no matter what. Let me give you an example. Have you ever met someone who's incredibly fit? Someone who clearly takes care of their body at the highest level? People look at them and say, they must be so motivated. But the truth is, they don't wake up every day feeling motivated to go to the gym. They don't leap out of bed excited to eat clean meals. They do it because it's a discipline. It's who they are, and because they've trained that discipline, the results show up whether they feel like it or not. Body doesn't care how motivated you are on any given day. It only reflects the consistency of your discipline. The same thing is true in business, in relationships, in every area of life. If you want an extraordinary relationship, you can't just be loving and attentive when you're in the mood. You have to be consistent with your presence, your attention, your commitment. That's discipline. If you want financial freedom, you can't just save or invest when you happen to feel inspired. You've got to practice the discipline of managing your money every day, even when you'd rather spend it. That's how results are created. Now, here's the beautiful part. Discipline may feel hard at first, but once you practice it enough, it becomes your new normal. In the beginning, getting up at 5 a.m. might feel like torture, but if you do it enough times, it no longer requires willpower. It becomes automatic. That's the real power of discipline. At first, it feels like a burden, but over time, it becomes freedom. Because when you live with discipline, you no longer waste energy debating with yourself. You no longer get stuck in the endless loop of, should I or shouldn't I? You've already decided. You've already committed. And that decision frees you from the chaos of relying on feelings. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Motivation is temporary. Discipline is permanent. Motivation pushes you when you're excited. Discipline carries you when you're exhausted. And here's the key. If you can learn to act without waiting for motivation, you'll develop a kind of power that most people will never know. Because the truth is, the most successful people aren't the most motivated, they're the most disciplined. So how do you build discipline? You build it like a muscle. You start small, you train it daily, and you expand it over time. You don't need to transform everything in one night. Pick one area of your life where you've been inconsistent and make a commitment to show up every single day regardless of how you feel. Maybe it's 10 minutes of reading. Maybe it's writing down your goals. Maybe it's making one extra sales call. It doesn't matter what it is. The point is that you do it whether you feel motivated or not. Every time you keep that promise to yourself, you reinforce the identity of being disciplined. You build the muscle, and that muscle will support you in every area of your life. And here's something important. Discipline isn't about being perfect. You're going to stumble. You're going to slip. You're going to have days where you miss. That's part of the process. The real test is what you do next. Do you let one missed day spiral into a week or a month, or do you bounce back immediately? Discipline isn't built in the moments of perfection. It's built in the moments of recovery. It's built in those moments when you don't feel like it, when the excuses are screaming at you and you still choose to take action. Those moments forge the strongest version of you. The reason most people never experience their full potential is because they let their feelings control their future. They say, I'll do it when I feel ready. I'll do it when I feel motivated. Do it when it's easier. And they live their entire lives waiting for the right time, waiting for the right feeling, waiting for the right circumstance. But life doesn't reward waiting. Life rewards discipline. If you want to separate yourself from the majority, if you want to step into a life that most people will only ever dream about, stop waiting to feel motivated. Stop waiting for the mood to strike. Build the discipline to act regardless of how you feel. You'll discover a freedom that motivation can never give you. Discipline beats motivation every time. Consistency is one of the least glamorous words in the dictionary, yet it's one of the most powerful forces you'll ever experience in your life. People think about success. They imagine these explosive breakthroughs, massive leaps, those big moments where everything suddenly changes. And yes, breakthroughs happen, but what truly creates them isn't a single dramatic act. It's the quiet, invisible power of consistency. It's the choice to show up day after day, stacking small actions on top of each other until the weight of all that effort produces a result that looks almost impossible from the outside. The truth is, consistency is the great separator. Most people can work hard for a day, a week, maybe even a month. But very few people can keep showing up month after month, year after year. That's why so many people never achieve their potential. Not because they're not capable, because they underestimate the power of steady progress. They want instant gratification. And when they don't see results quickly, they quit. Those who win, those who live extraordinary lives, are the ones who understand that consistency is the compound interest of success. It doesn't look like much in the beginning, but over time, it multiplies into something extraordinary. Think about it this way. If you go to the gym once, nothing happens. If you go for a little sore, but you don't see much change. If you go for a month, you might start noticing small improvements. But if you go every single day for a year, your body transforms. If you go every day for 5 years, your entire identity shifts. You're no longer someone who tries to get fit. You're someone who simply lives that way. That's the magic of consistency. It rewires who you are. This principle applies to everything. If you read 10 pages of a book every day, you might think it's nothing. But 10 pages a day is 300 pages a month. That's a dozen books a year. In 5 years, you've read 60 books. In 10 years, 120. Imagine the knowledge, the perspective, the wisdom you'd gain from that single small commitment. It's not about reading 1,000 pages in one weekend and then stopping. It's about 10 pages a day, every day. Here's the problem though, because consistency feels small, people undervalue it. They think, what's the point of doing this little action? It's not making a difference. And that's the trap. The reason consistency is so powerful is because the results are invisible at first. You don't see the seed growing underground. You don't notice the compound effect building day by day. Just because you can't see, it doesn't mean it's not working. The roots are growing deeper. The momentum is building. And then one day, the breakthrough happens and everyone else calls it luck. But you know it wasn't luck. It was consistency. Let's be honest, consistency is not easy. It's boring at times. It's repetitive. It's not exciting to wake up early every morning, to make those calls every day, to practice that skill over and over again. But that's exactly why it works. Because most people won't do it. Most people will quit when it gets repetitive, and that's your advantage. Every day you stay consistent, you separate yourself from the pack. Every day you stick with it, you're building momentum that others will never catch up to. And here's what's incredible. Once consistency takes root, it creates something called compounding momentum. At first, it feels like you're pushing a boulder uphill. It's heavy, it's exhausting, and you wonder if it's even moving. But if you keep pushing long enough, something shifts. The boulder crests the hill, and suddenly momentum is on your side. Now it's rolling downhill faster and faster. You're being pulled forward by the very thing you once had to push. That's what consistency does. It takes something hard and eventually turns it into something that works for you instead of against you. Look at the greatest athletes in the world. They don't just train when the season is on. They train year-round, day after day, even in the off-season, even when no one's watching. That's why they can perform at the highest level when it matters most. Look at great leaders, entrepreneurs, artists. They don't create greatness from a single burst of effort. They show up every single day, consistently putting in the work, honing their craft, making progress little by little. And over time, they build a body of work, a reputation, life that others admire. Consistency is also deeply tied to trust. Think about it. If you want people to believe in you, if you want them to follow you, support you, respect you, it's not about what you do once in a while. It's about what you do consistently. If someone shows up for you once, it feels good. But if they show up for you every single time, you trust them. The same is true with yourself. Confidence isn't built by occasional wins. Confidence is built by consistently keeping promises to yourself. When you say you'll do something and you follow through day after day, you begin to trust yourself at the deepest level. That trust becomes unshakable confidence. That confidence transforms everything. Now let's talk about the flip side. Inconsistency destroys momentum. Imagine you're trying to pump water from an old-fashioned hand pump. At first, you pump and nothing comes out, but you keep going, and eventually the water starts to flow. Now imagine you stop pumping for a while. When you go back, you don't get water instantly. You have to start over again, pumping just to get it flowing. That's what happens when you're inconsistent. Every time you stop, you lose momentum and you have to rebuild it. That's why so many people feel like they're always starting over. It's not that they're incapable. It's that they haven't mastered consistency. The beautiful part is you don't need to be perfect to be consistent. You don't need to do it all at once. What matters is progress. Even if you stumble, even if you miss a day, what defines consistency is that you come back. You keep going. Let one missed action turn into a week, a month, or a year. You bounce back. Because the power of consistency isn't in perfection, it's in persistence. And when you live consistently long enough, you'll notice something profound. The things that once required discipline now require no thought. They become part of who you are. At that point, you don't have to push yourself to do it anymore. It's automatic. That's when you know you've built real momentum. So ask yourself right now, where have I been inconsistent? Where have I started strong? And then let the fire die. What small actions could I commit to daily that, if compounded over time, would completely transform my life? Because the truth is, one consistent habit away from a breakthrough. Consistency over time is what turns ordinary actions into extraordinary results. Every dream you have, every goal you want to reach, every version of yourself you're trying to become comes with a price tag. And that price tag is sacrifice. It doesn't matter how much you want it, how clearly you can see it in your mind, or how much you talk about it. If you're not willing to give something up to get it, you'll never experience it. Progress is never free. There's always an exchange. The question is not whether you'll sacrifice, because you will. The question is whether you'll sacrifice for the life you want or for the life you're trying to escape. The hard truth is most people want success, but they want it on discount. They want to keep all their comforts, all their habits, all their distractions, and still have the extraordinary life. But that's not how life works. If you want growth, you have to let go of what's holding you down. If you want freedom, you have to give up what's enslaving you. If you want strength, you have to walk away from what makes you weak. Every step forward requires leaving something behind. Think about the people you admire, the ones who are living at the level you aspire to. They didn't get there because it was easy. They got there because they were willing to trade comfort for progress. They gave up sleep to build their craft. They gave up excuses to take action. They gave up short-term pleasure for long-term fulfillment. They were willing to endure temporary pain for permanent growth. And while everyone else was busy clinging to comfort, busy building a life that comfort could never give them. Let me be clear, sacrifice is not punishment. It's not about losing. It's about choosing. It's about saying, this matters more to me than that. It's about aligning your actions with your deepest values. For example, if your goal is to be in incredible shape, then you sacrifice junk food, late nights, laziness. You're not losing. You're choosing health, energy, vitality. If your goal is to build a successful business, then you sacrifice leisure time, endless scrolling, meaningless distractions. You're not losing. You're choosing growth, independence, and the ability to create impact. Sacrifice feels heavy in the moment, but what you gain is infinitely greater. And here's something most people never realize: you're already sacrificing. Every day you're making trades. If you spend 3 hours watching television, you've sacrificed 3 hours of progress toward your dreams. If you hit snooze instead of getting up to work on yourself, you've sacrificed a piece of your future for a little more comfort in the present. If you keep toxic people in your life because you don't want to deal with the discomfort of letting them go, you've sacrificed your potential for the sake of temporary peace. Isn't whether or not you sacrifice. The point is whether you're sacrificing for the life you want or sacrificing the life you want. There's also a deeper level to this. Sacrifice isn't just about giving up things. It's about giving up versions of yourself. The version of you that makes excuses has to die for the disciplined version of you to live. The version of you that procrastinates has to die for the consistent version of you to rise. The version of you that's addicted to comfort has to die for the version of you that thrives on growth to be born. That's what transformation really is. It's a funeral for your old self. And if you're not willing to sacrifice who you've been, never meet who you're meant to become, it's not easy. Your old habits will fight for survival. Your old identity will whisper to you, come back. Stay comfortable. Don't push too hard. Don't change too much. And you'll be tempted because comfort feels safe. But here's the truth. Comfort is the cage and sacrifice is the key. The more you cling to comfort, the more trapped you become. The more you embrace sacrifice, the more freedom you create. And anyone who's accomplished something extraordinary, they all have stories of sacrifice. The athlete who gave up parties and free time to train for years before anyone knew their name. The entrepreneur who worked long nights, lived frugally, reinvested every dollar instead of spending it, all while their friends were enjoying luxuries. The student who studied relentlessly while others played. In the moment, it may have looked like they were losing, but in the long run, they gained everything. Sacrifice is the price of progress. It's the proof of how badly you really want something. People say, I do anything for my dream. Really, because the moment sacrifice is required, most people hesitate. They want to keep their dream and their comfort. They want to keep their growth and their excuses. But you can't hold on to both. One will kill the other. Either you sacrifice your excuses and your comfort to gain your dream. You sacrifice your dream to hold on to your excuses and comfort. It's that simple. And here's the paradox. Once you embrace sacrifice, it no longer feels like suffering. It becomes fuel. When you're connected to the bigger vision, pain of sacrifice transforms into purpose. Waking up early no longer feels like a punishment. It feels like power. Saying no to distractions no longer feels restrictive. It feels liberating. Walking away from what doesn't serve you no longer feels like loss. It feels like alignment. That's when sacrifice becomes not just something you endure, but something you embrace. So the question you need to ask yourself is this: am I willing to give up? What habits, what distractions, what excuses, what versions of myself am I willing to lay down so I can pick up the life I'm meant to live? Because until you answer that, progress will remain out of reach. Sacrifice is the price of progress, and the life you want will only come when you're willing to pay it. Most people think success is about big breakthroughs, massive wins, giant leaps that separate the great from the average. But the truth is, greatness doesn't come from the big things. It's built in the small things. It's not what you do once in a while that shapes your life. It's what you do consistently in the smallest details. Excellence isn't just about showing up in the big moments when the lights are bright and everyone is watching. Excellence is about how you live when no one's watching. It's in how you carry yourself, how you treat the little things, how you handle the moments that seem insignificant, because those are the moments that create your future. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. If you cut corners in the small things, you'll cut corners in the big things. You're sloppy with details when they don't seem to matter. You'll be sloppy when they do matter. And if you allow mediocrity into the small areas of your life, that mediocrity will bleed into everything. People think they can separate the two. They think it's just a small thing. It doesn't matter. But life doesn't work that way. Your habits become who you are, and who you are shows up everywhere. Think about an athlete who trains at the highest level. It's not just about what they do in the arena when the game is on the line. It's about how they tie their shoes, how they warm up, how they treat every single practice, every single repetition. Smallest detail matters. Why? Because they know that if they build discipline and precision in the small things, they'll automatically bring it into the big things. By the time they're in the championship game, it's too late to build habits. The habits were built in the thousands of small, invisible moments before. The same principle applies in business, in relationships, in life. If you're careless in how you communicate with your partner in the little moments, don't be surprised when the relationship struggles in the big ones. If you're careless with how you manage a few dollars, don't expect to handle millions wisely. If you're careless with how you treat people you think can't do anything for you, expect respect from those who can. Excellence is not about selective effort. It's about holding yourself to a higher standard everywhere, because that standard becomes your identity. What people don't realize is that small things accumulate. Each action, no matter how insignificant it feels, is a vote for the person you are becoming. You may think skipping one workout doesn't matter. You may think showing up 5 minutes late doesn't matter. You may think not returning one phone call doesn't matter. But those little moments stack, and over time they create momentum, either toward mediocrity or toward mastery. Excellence is simply the consistent accumulation of small, disciplined choices. Now here's the challenge: because the small things feel so small, most people dismiss them. They think, I'll be serious when it really counts. But the truth is, it's always counting. Every decision is training you for something. Every action is reinforcing a habit. Every choice is building momentum. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. And your habits are forged in the small daily moments. There's a saying that champions are made when nobody's watching. And it's true. The moments you think don't matter are the exact moments that matter most, because they're forming the character that shows up in the big moments. Excellence is not an act. It's a habit. It's not what you occasionally do. It's who you consistently are. And that's why the details matter so much. So ask yourself, how do you handle the small things in your life? Do you keep your word on the promises that feel insignificant? Do you follow through on commitments that no one else will ever notice? Do you hold yourself to a higher standard even when you could get away with less? Because those are the questions that determine whether you're living with true excellence or just pretending to. And let's be honest, the little things are often the hardest because they don't give you immediate reward. No one is cheering for you when you decide to get up on time. No one is applauding when you say no to the distraction. No one is celebrating when you send that extra email, finish that extra rep, read that extra page. That's the point. Excellence is born in silence long before the applause. By the time the world notices, it's because you spent years being excellent in the dark. Excellence also builds trust, not just with others, but with yourself. You know you give your best. In the small things, you build an unshakable confidence that carries into everything you do. You don't have to hype yourself up before the big moments because you already know who you are. You already know you've built the habit of giving your all, and you can trust yourself to do it again. That confidence is priceless, and it only comes from living with excellence daily. And here's the reality, the opposite is also true. If you cut corners in the little things, you start to lose trust in yourself. You might not admit it out loud, but you feel it. Every time you don't follow through, every time you settle, every time you say good enough, when you know it's not. Chip away at your own confidence. Over time, you don't just lower your standard, you lower your belief in yourself. That's why the little things matter so much. They're not just actions, they're evidence. Evidence that proves to you who you are. So if you want to separate yourself, if you want to live at a level most people will never touch, start holding yourself to excellence in the smallest details. Decide that no task is too small for your best effort. Decide that your word is unbreakable, even when it doesn't seem to matter. Decide that the standard you live by will not change depending on who's watching or how big the moment feels. Because when you build that kind of discipline, when you treat the little things as if they matter, you'll find that the big victories take care of themselves. Excellence in the small things creates big victories. Dreams are beautiful. They give us vision. They give us hope. They give us a sense of what's possible. A dream on its own is just a picture in your mind, a movie that plays in your imagination, a fantasy you visit when life feels heavy. A dream without action doesn't build a future. It builds frustration. You see, is full of people with dreams. They talk about what they want. They write it on vision boards. They post about it. They imagine it, but very few ever live it. And the difference between the ones who live it and the ones who don't is not luck. It's not talent. It's not who they know. The difference is work ethic. Work ethic is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It's the thing that takes the invisible picture in your mind and makes it tangible, something you can touch, see, and live. Without work ethic, your dream will stay trapped in your imagination. With work ethic, you can turn even the most impossible vision into a reality. That's how powerful it is. Now, here's the catch. Work ethic is not glamorous. It's not Instagram worthy. It's not the highlight reel you see online. Work ethic is messy. It's sweat, sacrifice, long nights, early mornings. It's grinding when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, when no one cares. It's choosing to keep going when your body says stop, when your mind says quit, when everything in you screams for comfort. That's work ethic. And most people aren't willing to pay that price. They want the dream without the grind. The grind is the gateway. Think about someone who built something extraordinary. Maybe it's a world-class athlete, a legendary artist, an entrepreneur who started with nothing and built an empire. When you look at their lives now, it looks like a dream come true. But what you don't see are the thousands of hours they poured in when no one knew their name. You don't see the failures, the rejections, the lonely nights, the doubts they had to push through. All you see is the glory. Behind the glory is work ethic. That's the part people skip. And that's why so few ever get to taste the dream they once had in their heart. Work ethic is proof that you believe in your dream. Talk is cheap. Anyone can say they want something. Anyone can get excited in the moment. But your daily grind, your willingness to work when it's not convenient, that's the evidence. That's what proves whether you're serious or just curious. Because the truth is, every action you take or don't take is casting a vote for your future. Every day you put in the work, you're casting a vote for the life you want. Every day you don't, you're voting against it. Your dream isn't built in a day. It's built in daily deposits, daily choices, daily effort. And here's what's powerful. The dream itself doesn't care how you feel. The dream doesn't wait for you to be motivated. The dream doesn't ask you if you're tired. It only responds to your work ethic. If you work for it, it moves closer. If you don't, it drifts further away. That's why so many people live with regret. It's not that they didn't have the dream. It's that they didn't have the discipline, the consistency, the sacrifice, the standard, the work ethic to bring it alive. And I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine you're standing at the end of your life, looking back. Imagine seeing two versions of yourself. One version lived with strong work ethic. They put in the effort day after day. They sacrificed. They stayed disciplined. They pushed when it was uncomfortable. They refused to quit. And because of that, they lived their dream. They felt what it was like to wake up every day fulfilled, to know they gave everything, to know they didn't leave their potential untapped. That's one version. The other version had the same dream, the same potential, the same opportunities, but they didn't put in the work. They made excuses. They wanted comfort more than growth. They talked more than they acted. And because of that, they died with their dream still inside them. Which version do you want to be? See, the dream is a gift. It's given to you for a reason. It's not random. It's a glimpse of what's possible for your life. But the gift comes with responsibility, the responsibility to work for it. Because if you don't, that dream will turn into a nightmare called regret. And regret is the heaviest weight you'll ever carry. Work ethic is the antidote to regret. It's how you make sure you don't look back and wish you'd given more. And the truth is, the dream isn't just about you. When you live with real work ethic and turn your dream into reality, you inspire everyone around you. You show your family what's possible. You show your friends what's possible. You show your community what's possible. A dream becomes more than a dream. It becomes a legacy. But that legacy will never exist if you're not willing to work for it. So the question is simple. Are you willing to pay the price? Are you willing to do the work when it's not fun? It's not easy. When it's not popular, are you willing to sweat, to sacrifice, to show up relentlessly? Because that's the cost of turning your dream into reality. You can have excuses or you can have results, but you can't have both. The beautiful part is, once you embrace work ethic, once you live it, you realize the process itself is the reward. You realize that the grind, the sacrifice, the discipline, it's not just about reaching the dream, it's about who you become in the process. Because the truth is, the real dream isn't just about having the house, the money, the career, the title. The real dream is becoming the person who was strong enough, disciplined enough, consistent enough, relentless enough to earn it. That's the dream. That's the life worth living. Work ethic turns dreams into reality.